The cameras flashed, the crowd froze, and just like that, Hollywood had a new obsession.
Oh, it was a total
It
shockwave.
really was. Welcome to Starscope Report, the deep dive where we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and, those viral influencer scandals.
Right, from red carpet surprises to massive social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
Exactly. And today we are unpacking a massive one. The headline, Late Show Cancellation Twist, What Really Happened?
Yeah, this is a huge one.
We've got this crazy stack of insider reports, leaked corporate financials, and raw YouTube transcripts to really figure out why an 11-year television institution just vanished overnight.
It literally disappeared. I mean, in May 2026, CBS just abruptly canceled The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, and they didn't just end a single show, right? They effectively dismantled the entire historic late-night franchise that David Letterman built from the ground up over 30 years ago.
Totally. It completely leveled the traditional entertainment industry. Because, we're looking at a story that starts out as this really sterile debate over declining ad revenues.
Right, the usual corporate excuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then it just rapidly spirals into these massive allegations of political appeasement, multi-billion-dollar corporate mergers.
Oh, and the rooftop destruction.
Yes. A very literal watermelon-smashing act of revenge on a New York City rooftop.
It's just wild. So if you're listening and you think this is just, another story about linear TV dying because everyone is watching TikTok or YouTube, stick around.
Yeah, do not tune out.
Because the multi-billion-dollar corporate maneuver behind this cancellation is a massive twist that completely redefines how modern media operates.
It really does. I mean, to understand the sheer scale of what happened, we kind of have to start with the official narrative that CBS pushed out to the press.
Right, the financial angle.
Yeah. They framed jettisoning The Late Show strictly as a cold, hard financial decision. According to the entertainment reports we have, there were rumors that the show was just hemorrhaging money.
Hemorrhaging? Like, how much are we talking?
Well, some industry sources pegged the losses at around $40 million a year.
Oh, $40 million. I mean, that is a staggering loss leader.
It is, but when you dig into the economics of late-night television in 2026, that number isn't entirely shocking.
Because of the traditional broadcast model.
Exactly. That model relies on massive live viewership numbers to command premium advertising rates. And as those audiences have fragmented across streaming and social media over the years.
Right, the ad revenue simply cannot cover the massive overhead of a flagship broadcast production.
Exactly. You've got the union crews, the whole celebrity booking infrastructure, the physical studio space in Manhattan. It's astronomically expensive.
Okay, so $40 million is a massive deficit. But looking closely at the fallout, this isn't just a simple cancellation where they, swap in a cheaper host to save a few bucks.
No, not at all.
It's about what CBS is doing with that iconic 11:35 p.m. time slot moving forward. They're completely abandoning original in-house late-night programming entirely.
Which is it's the end of an era.
It is. Instead, they're handing the hour over to media mogul Byron Allen. They are moving his syndicated channel show, Comics Unleashed, up an hour to fill the void.
And the underlying financial mechanism of this Byron Allen deal is really what reveals CBS's true strategy here.
Oh, absolutely. Break that down for us.
Well, they are not producing this show. They aren't even selling the advertising time for it. They're essentially just acting as a landlord, leasing the hour of airtime directly to Allen.
Wow. So they just wash their hands of it.
Pretty much. He pays them a flat fee, or, they work out a revenue share, and Allen is entirely responsible for securing the sponsors and selling the commercial breaks himself.
That is wild. CBS is just offloading all the production risk and the market volatility. It feels like it's like a neighborhood losing its most prestigious Michelin star flagship restaurant. And instead of the landlord trying to attract a new innovative chef to keep the prestige.
Right, they just take the easy way out.
Yeah. They just rent the empty storefront to a company that installs pop-up vending machines and handles its own inventory. It's this empty warehouse strategy.
That's a perfect analogy.
It guarantees a tiny trickle of risk-free income, but it completely hollows out the cultural footprint of the space.
And you know who else saw it exactly that way? David Letterman, the man who laid the bricks for this specific franchise back in 1993.
Oh, Dave had some thoughts.
He looked at this exact same mechanism and coined a brilliant term for it. In a highly publicized Q&A with the New York Times, this was about 9 months after the cancellation was announced, he called it the self-storage strategy.
The self-storage strategy. I love that.
Right. He pointed out that decades ago, self-storage facilities were rare. You're simply responsible for your own belongings. But now, those aluminum storage units just pepper the American landscape.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Just cheap, empty boxes.
Exactly. And he directly compared that physical blight to network television, leasing out its soul to syndicated content, just to make pennies on the dollar without having to actually build anything.
Letterman certainly didn't hold back his contempt for the CBS executives peddling this financial justification either.
Oh, he went in.
He called them gutless and cowards, stating on the record they're lying. And then he delivered that quote that instantly went viral, calling the executives lying weasels.
Lying weasels, classic Dave.
Classic. He acknowledges that streaming has nicked the broadcast model, obviously, but he fiercely rejects the idea that a $40 million deficit is the real reason you kill a cultural institution.
Which brings up this really fascinating tension in the public response. Because listening to Letterman vent his fury, you kind of have to look at the broader context of who is actually watching broadcast television right now.
Yeah, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second, because looking through the highly polarized comment sections from the late-nighter coverage, part of me wonders if Dave is just tilting at windmills.
How do you mean?
Well, the generational divide in these forums is just vicious. You have younger commenters arguing that linear TV is a completely dead ecosystem.
Right, they're not wrong about the demographics.
Exactly. They point out the median age of a broadcast viewer is pushing 70. Advertisers know this. The networks know this.
Yeah, it's an open secret in the industry.
Even guys like Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Kimmel have gone on the record over the last few years admitting the traditional late-night format is in its twilight. So it makes you wonder, is Letterman just a nostalgist refusing to accept that the medium he helped invent is just fundamentally incompatible with modern viewing habits?
It is very easy to dismiss him as, a boomer yelling at a cloud.
Right.
But Letterman's actual theory for why Colbert was fired isn't rooted in denial about television ratings. It's actually rooted in corporate appeasement.
Okay, this is where it gets crazy. If you're loving these Hollywood twists, make sure you're subscribed to Starscope Report, because we've got an even crazier layer to this story coming up right now.
Yeah, because according to his New York Times interview, Letterman claims Colbert was dumped because Paramount, the massive conglomerate that owns CBS, is in the middle of selling the network to Skydance Media in an $8 billion merger.
$8 billion. That completely shifts the entire narrative, because suddenly a $40 million operating loss is literally a rounding error when you're trying to push through an $8 billion acquisition.
Precisely the point Letterman is making. He theorizes that the executives wanted to ensure an absolutely frictionless deal.
Frictionless?
Yeah. He points the finger directly at Skydance CEO David Ellison and his brother, mockingly referring to them as the Oracle twins or the Oracle boys, a nod to their father, Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison.
Wow. And now, really quick, crucial rule for us here. I want to explicitly state to you listening that we are not taking political sides here.
Right. Absolutely not.
We are simply reporting the factual claims and the allegations found in the source material regarding this merger.
Exactly. We're just looking at what Letterman said. And his exact quote is that these executives don't want any trouble along the lines of freedom of the press or free speech or freedom of expression.
That is a heavy accusation.
It is. He claims they view a fiercely independent press as an old-fashioned liability, and they didn't want any government scrutiny complicating the merger.
Well, and think about it. Stephen Colbert is famously one of the most vocal, unrelenting critics of Donald Trump on television.
No, without a doubt.
If you look at this purely through the lens of corporate risk management, having a host who generates nightly political headlines is a massive variable.
It's a huge risk for them.
According to Letterman's theory, Skydance looked at the Late Show desk and decided it was just easier to eliminate the variable entirely. They throw his cancellation to the merger deal to keep the political waters perfectly calm.
And, the Hindustan Times source actually provides some vital circumstantial context that really supports this theory of corporate sanitization.
Oh, yeah, the settlement stuff.
Exactly. For instance, Paramount recently agreed to a $16 million settlement with Trump over a 60 Minutes editing dispute.
$16 million.
Yeah, and in the context of an $8 billion merger, a $16 million settlement is essentially just a premium paid to make a political headache vanish from the ledger before the ink dries on the Skydance contract.
Just sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah.
And the reports suggest the risk mitigation goes way beyond just settling lawsuits. Right?
Definitely.
Because Skydance has reportedly promised to eliminate all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at Paramount once the merger is complete.
Right.
Furthermore, they haven't denied claims that they will run $20 million in public service announcements that align with Trump's ideological beliefs.
Which is huge, because these moves really paint a picture of a media conglomerate actively neutralizing its perceived political biases to ensure a smooth transition of power.
Yeah, it's wild. What started as this sterile debate over a financial spreadsheet has warped into a massive structural shift in what a major broadcast network is willing to platform.
Exactly. It suggests that at the highest levels of corporate media, a host's political stance is now being calculated as a literal liability on a balance sheet.
It's like when an influencer gets dropped by a sponsor to save a brand deal, but on a multi-billion-dollar corporate scale.
That's a really good way to put it.
Now, you'd think when a network treats a legendary time slot like distressed real estate, actively liquidating it to appease billionaires and smooth over a merger, you'd expect the remaining hosts in the industry to fight like wolves over the abandoned audience.
You really would.
But wait till you hear what came next. The reaction from Colbert's rivals to seeing the flagship of their industry dismantled shows something entirely unprecedented.
It really does. I mean, the contrast with the late-night wars of the past is just staggering.
Oh, the 90s were brutal.
Exactly. Back in the 1990s, the feud between Jay Leno and David Letterman was the definition of cutthroat. They were fighting for dominance in this massive, culturally central pie, and the goal was basically to ensure the other guy starved.
Right. But today, the pie has shrunk so drastically that it's fostered this incredible sense of solidarity.
It is so true.
When the news of Colbert's cancellation broke, Jimmy Kimmel, who hosts the direct rival show over on ABC, posted a picture of himself and Colbert on his Instagram story.
Oh, I love this post.
It was so good. He wrote, "Love you, Stephen. F you and all your Sheldon CBS."
It's a hilarious, pointed dig at CBS's reliance on their young Sheldon franchise, but it carries this genuine affection.
It really does. And you know, the dying medium of traditional television has genuinely bonded these former competitors.
Oh, absolutely. You really saw this crystallize during the Writers Guild strike in 2023. The major hosts, Colbert, Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, and John Oliver, they all teamed up to launch the Strike Force 5 podcast.
Right, to support their staffs.
Exactly. The initiative was designed to support their striking crews, but it publicly showcased their shared existential dread.
Yeah, they realized they were all navigating a sinking ship, and there was no point in stabbing each other over the last life jacket.
That is so true. And Colbert has been fiercely protective of that bond ever since.
Oh, yeah. Like when Trump publicly criticized Kimmel's performance hosting the Oscars?
Yes. Colbert used his monologue to defend his rival, telling the former president to keep his friend Jimmy Kimmel's name out of his mouth.
He explicitly called Kimmel his podcast brother and vowed to defend him until my death or until the next ad for Mint Mobile.
That gallows humor really permeated Colbert's final week on the air, too. He brought all those hosts, the Jimmys, Seth, John Oliver, onto the show for a farewell run.
The camaraderie was just palpable.
It was. And when Letterman made his appearance and Foe anxiously asked what would become of the Jimmys, now that late night was seemingly collapsing.
Oh, Colbert deadpanned that the network had a plan to put them in a captive breeding program.
A captive breeding program, just hilarious.
It's the perfect comedic defense mechanism. But if you are Colbert and you genuinely believe your network is wronging you, liquidating your legacy to appease an $8 billion merger gallows, humor only goes so far.
Right.
How do you actually say goodbye to the institution? Later in the episode, we'll talk about the shocking twist nobody saw coming on that rooftop.
Yeah, because you certainly don't just wave and roll the credits. You engineer a heavy dose of cinematic, chaotic, physical comedy.
We have to set the scene for the May 14th taped segment. This aired just a week before the final broadcast. Letterman returns to the Ed Sullivan Theater.
Which is huge. This is the very theater he and his crew literally rebuilt in the 1990s to house The Late Show.
Yeah, he returns for one final act of absolute defiance.
And to fully appreciate the gravity of what happens next, the Rediscover the 80s archive provides some really essential historical context here.
Break it down for us.
So, David Letterman has a deeply beloved, decades-long history of destroying things in the name of physics.
Physics.
Right. During his NBC days, and later at CBS, he would routinely drop items off a 5-story tower just to watch them smash in slow motion.
Just amazing television.
Bowling balls, bags of peat moss, a frozen turkey attached to a parachute. He even utilized a 90-ton hydraulic press to crush plates of jelly donuts and dollhouses full of tomatoes.
It was absurd, it was beautifully childish, and it formed the foundational DNA of his late-night empire.
Exactly. So cut to May 14th, 2026. Letterman is sitting in the guest chair on the Late Show stage next to Colbert.
Right, and mid-interview, Letterman stops the conversation and asks for verification.
Yeah.
He says, hey, you guys will verify that this is actually CBS property, right?
He specifically wants Colbert to confirm on camera that the guest chairs they are currently sitting on belong to CBS, Paramount, and Skydance.
Once Colbert confirms that the chairs are 100% corporate property, Letterman sets the trap. He mutters, be a shame if something were to happen to them.
It's so good.
On cue, he hires stagehands to walk out onto the active set and literally carry the chairs away.
They leave the sterile corporate environment of the studio and head straight up to the roof of the Ed Sullivan Theater.
Letterman looks gleefully into the camera and announces they are about to engage in the wanton destruction of CBS property.
I mean, down on the sidewalk, 8 stories below, the crew has set up this massive target. It's the iconic CBS eye logo, constructed entirely out of colorful ball pit balls.
The progression of this segment is just a masterclass in escalating television vandalism. It starts with the first drop.
Drop number 1.
They heave one of the guest chairs off the edge of the roof, and they completely miss the target.
Completely miss it. The chair just violently shatters on the hard Manhattan pavement.
But Letterman, drawing on decades of experience throwing things off buildings, calmly advises Colbert to recalibrate.
He tells him to adjust for the wind and keep the trajectory closer to the side of the building.
Drop number 2. The second guest chair. This time, it's a direct hit.
The chair smashes dead center into the CBS eye, sending this colorful explosion of ball pit balls scattering across the sidewalk.
But that's just the warm-up, because drop number 3 carries massive emotional weight. Colbert brings over his own iconic Eames desk chair.
Yeah, this is the exact chair where he sat, interviewed guests, and delivered monologues for 1,810 shows.
He takes a moment to acknowledge the history, asking aloud how many hours he has spent sitting in that specific piece of furniture. He says a brief goodbye to his old friend, and they heave it over the ledge.
And then, drop number 4 brings back the absolute classics, a barrage of watermelons.
Oh, you have to have the watermelon.
They hurl melons off the roof, watching them explode into red mist on the pavement. Letterman beams, comparing the spectacle to the 4th of July and joking that Galileo would be proud of their physics experiment.
And the grand finale involves a prop provided by the network itself. CBS, perhaps trying to save face or just hopelessly leaning into the bit, had sent over a massive 3-tier commemorative cake celebrating the Late Show's run from 1993 to 2026.
Colbert notes on tape that the aerodynamics of wedding cake are not to be believed.
They launch the cake over the side, and it just obliterates on the sidewalk below.
It is pure, unadulterated catharsis.
Truly. But once the destruction is over, standing on that roof looking down at the wreckage of the network's property, the tone shifts entirely.
It does. It becomes surprisingly poignant.
Yeah.
Colbert turns to Letterman, looking at the man who invented the format they just tore apart, and thanks him for creating the show 33 years ago.
And Letterman looks back at Colbert and says, thank you for everything you've done for our country.
It's a quiet, heavy recognition of the political weight and cultural anchor Colbert provided during his tenure.
Colbert then asks Letterman if he has any parting words for the audience before they sign off. Letterman pauses and says, well, not necessarily to the audience.
He turns, looks directly down the lens of the camera, speaking straight to the Paramount and Skydance executives who orchestrated the cancellation, and quotes the legendary broadcast journalist Edward R. Murrow.
Good night and good luck, motherfuckers.
It is the ultimate mic drop, completely severing the cord between the creators and the corporate machine.
Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because the journey of this cancellation tells a massive story about the state of our media.
It really does. We started with the cold economics of a network leasing its historic airtime to Byron Allen's self-storage strategy, bypassing the risk of actual creation.
Right. We navigated the allegations of billionaires smoothing over their political edges and eliminating outspoken critics to secure an $8 billion merger.
And it all culminated in a cathartic physical rebellion on a New York City rooftop.
The underlying mechanism here really reveals the illusion of modern broadcast media.
Definitely. The hosts you invite into your living room, the shows that feel like permanent cultural fixtures, they are ultimately just assets on a corporate balance sheet.
Yeah. When the math changes or when the political liabilities threaten a larger merger, those fixtures can be dismantled overnight.
It leaves you with a pretty uncomfortable question to ponder long after you turn off this deep dive.
Right. If broadcast networks are actively turning their airwaves into cheap self-storage facilities, and massive parent companies are perfectly willing to neutralize their political edges to secure billion-dollar mergers, where does actual biting satire go from here?
That's the million-dollar question. Because it's becoming painfully clear that true, uncompromising satire cannot survive in a house owned by the billionaires it's trying to satirize.
Exactly. Will it have to exist entirely outside the traditional corporate media system? The landscape of entertainment and news is fundamentally fracturing, and the safe spaces for challenging the status quo are getting smaller by the day.
It's a wild time for pop culture.
It really is. You've been listening to Starscope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture.
Keep questioning the stories behind the fame.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining. And remember, the next time the cameras flash and the crowd freezes, look past the stage and ask yourself, who is really pulling the strings?